I think we're on, Jay.
All right.
So, hey, gang, welcome to Coach Rozy Chalk Talk. I'm excited to be down with a good friend, Jay Canning, who is leading. If you guys had a chance to watch yesterday, some of our athletes, we're doing a leadership workshop through the whole summer, leadership system, and Jay's actually leading our leadership section for that for all of our kids in our junior program, and just does a fantastic job. Him and I have got to know each other over the last couple of years. So Jay, welcome aboard, buddy.
Thanks for having me, Coach.
Hey, just like, for those that don't know you, just give a little bit about your background, like where you're from. I know you're not necessarily grew up in the area, but you got here as quick as you can, right? Because you got to the Midwest as quick as you could. Just a little bit about who you are, your background, where you came from, and kind of what brought you here, and then we'll start talking about how you got to some of the leadership stuff.
All right. My name is Jay Canning, like Coach said. I'm the health educator here at the Santee Health Center here in Santee, Nebraska. I grew up in Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia, all around that area. Like you said, 25 years of my life I was there. I went to college out there and everything, graduated, and then came out here and I started teaching.
No, we got to back up. Look at him trying to jump quick. So
nobody likes talking about themselves.
Yeah, I know.
If they do, if somebody likes talking about themselves, they got a problem.
So you were an athlete. You're a pretty good athlete. You went to college. So stop through that part, because with some of our folks too, I know it's like some of your background is you grew up in the athletic world too, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I was sports year round all the time.
Played everything.
Yeah, in high school I didn't play everything as much as basketball is where I kind of focused more on that, and then.
Well, that's a little bit different than what you see, because you're at a bigger school, right? So it's as you moved into high school, you had to focus more on one sport. Do you think?
And I could have done other ones as well, but we had moved from Maryland down to Virginia right before when I started high school, and it was a very different area. I mean, it was only about an hour away, but it was a lot different. Yeah, so. Being around, and this is not saying that it was the right decision, but when you're young and you start being around people that are different from you, if
it's
a little scary, yeah. So I kind of backed off from some of that and just stuck to basketball, where everyone and everything was a little more comfortable, and backed off the other sports.
Let me ask you this: would you reflect back now and go, "Hey, I wish I would have"?
Oh yeah, I wish I would have stuck with it and done all the sports. I definitely wish that.
For some of our young kids, or maybe parents that are looking and say, "I want to back from a leadership," and I know we'll get more into the leadership stuff. What would you say to maybe a parent, a kid that goes, because we have different kids that do move in, maybe moving from a smaller town to, just a Yankton, or moving from a smaller town to a Sioux Falls or Sioux City, something like that. Maybe just real quick, a step or two that. And I know it was tough from that situation, but could change a kid's mind to go, hey, get out of your comfort zone. You said, well, it's just really uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And I know we'll talk about this from a leadership standpoint, to maybe get out of that comfort zone to step into something that they, like you said, you now looking back, you're like, oh, you know what, I really wish I would have done that. It would have been more rewarding. But it's tough in that situation to make those choices. Yeah. And I know as parents, we're like, well, I don't want to put my kid in a situation where he feels uncomfortable, and it could be a bad situation for him too.
Right.
What would you maybe say to a parent or some of the kids that are watching?
Well, for me, it was actually a little bit of the reverse. I came from a more populated, even more urban type area, into more of the suburbs. So that was the transition for me. It was kind of, instead of going to someplace bigger, it was actually a little smaller, but still pretty big and much bigger than anything around here. Right. So that's why it was uncomfortable for me. But yeah, for some advice to the parents, and if it's a kid watching that's saying, I'm not sure what to do, I feel uncomfortable, man, you got to learn to fight through that. At some point in your life, you have to learn to fight through what's comfortable to go after what you want. And the sooner you learn that lesson, the better. Right. Some people go their whole life and never learn that lesson, unfortunately. But it's much better to learn that early on, and especially while you're still at home, and maybe would have some parents there and family.
Have some support.
Yeah, have some support.
Yeah. Well, you and I have talked about before, to get to the point where you feel comfortable, you have to be uncomfortable.
Oh yeah.
We've talked about that it's easy to take the easy path, but anytime you want to have success, there's going to be some bumps along the way. Right?
Yeah, and people say they want change. Well, for things to change, you got to do things differently. You want to grow past wherever your family was or wherever your community is now. You can't do things the way they've done things. You can't think the way they've thought. Otherwise, you're just going to be in the same boat as you are now or as they are. something has to change.
So I'm going to step now. Yeah. So you made the decision. I'm just going to do basketball. Kind of start there. So stud and.
It was It's funny because the best players from there, went on and played top D1 ball.
Right.
Several players on my high school team went and played basketball somewhere. There's people I was playing against in our league in high school, went to Kentucky, was playing in Virginia, big time people were transferring to Oak Hill Academy, that high school even. So I mean, it's a big time area, that DC, Maryland, Virginia area. It's pretty much the cream of the crop when it comes to high school basketball talent. So I mean, I was good, I was decent. I wasn't the best one around, for sure, but I was good enough to go on and play in college briefly. And,
but you took the opportunity, and I think even talking to some kids in the area, that there was an opportunity there, and there's opportunities for kids, because I think, from just developing yourself too, I see a lot of kids say, well, if I'm not going to Nebraska, if I'm not going to Iowa, well then, gosh, I'm not playing big time, so I'm not going to go do those sports. I'm not going to continue to do that. And saying, do what's best for you. But I always tell kids, if you still want to play a sport, if you put the time and effort and you're good enough, you could probably find a place to play. Now, it might be NAI, and not knocking NAI schools, but there's a level that you could, not say there has to be a skill level there too, not to pop somebody's bubble. But there are places that you can play and you have opportunities. So I know you took that opportunity, and then some things.
Yeah, again, you have 4 years to seize this opportunity, and you'll never get that opportunity again.
Right.
Just because it's not what they sell you on TV as what basketball is all about or what it should be. That's such a small percentage of the population.
Right.
That will ever get that opportunity. That's one of the things about the social media world, like just media in general, all over in our faces all the time. It kind of gives us unreal expectations because not everybody can be that way.
Right.
So it's an opportunity to go play college basketball if that's you want, or a college sport, or and again, you're still, even if you're able to go to an NAIA school or something like that, you're still up in the top 20% of probably high school athletes if you're able to do that. In the world, it's still an honor. It's still something, and it means a lot, to learn how to dedicate yourself to studies and to be a part of a team. All that. It's a good opportunity.
And that leads, I know we'll talk about that, but it leads just to putting those, I always say stepstones in place so that when you take on other challenges as you get to be an adult, do you think how much did athletics, even just high school, even if kids don't go to, I even tell kids, like, you should do some sport, do something, or maybe not even a sport, but some extracurricular activity, whether it's band or music or play or, any of those type of things. I said those extracurricular because we, like you talk about, it just takes some dedication, some time, a little bit of extra effort that you're putting yourself above everybody else. I mean, you maybe want to mention about what you see the correlation between those type of things and how that carries over to leadership and lifestyle and getting some of the success that you want as a leader.
Yeah, I mean, the easiest thing to mention is that it just makes you a well-rounded person. Getting into something, and most people aren't in love with English, aren't in love with math, aren't in love with science. Those things that they push on you in school. So you got to find something to interest you.
Right.
So just again, going after things and trying new things. If you have opportunities, there's some schools, a lot of schools, like small towns, even here in Nebraska and South Dakota, that don't have a lot of extracurricular activity opportunities in comparison with like bigger cities.
Right.
So if you are in like a Yankton or somewhere like that where it's a little bigger and there's all these different clubs and things, go after them. After them. You'll find new opportunities, new aspects of your own personality that you didn't know existed. That's one of the unfortunate things about smaller areas is people don't really get to explore what they could be good at,
right?
Or what really might set them on fire, like as far as in their heart, like a passion. They won't have the opportunity to find a passion as easily because those opportunities don't exist. So if you're somewhere where they do exist, you got to go after them because they'll open up the new parts of your personality. But then also, to touch on what your original question was, just learning how to juggle things and learning how to prioritize. That's huge. You got to go to school. You have to balance your family life, and then you have to balance your other practices, and there's no way to explain how important that is for when you get into being an adult.
Right.
You know, because when you're a kid, you know, a lot of kids, or teenagers, sorry. Your parents are bugging you and telling you gotta go here, you gotta go here. Now it's time for practice, time to get up, do all that. So you don't really learn how to juggle any part of your schedule even. But the more you add to it, the more you have the opportunity to learn how to just be responsible for your own life. The more you add.
So let me ask you this, and we'll kind of jump in. So then when you went to college, we talked about scheduling, because I know I have college and athletes come back from college, or even kids come back that were athletes and not necessarily athletes in college. We come back and say, well, coach, it's just completely different, because like you said, mom and dad would say, hey, get up and go to class. Like, you don't have to go to class if you want to. Mm-hmm. But when you went to college, what determined, like, what college did you go to, and what determined made you decide to go there, and then the different paths that you chose when you were there?
I went to actually a couple different schools. So I transferred a couple times, and for me, I didn't even know what to look for, because my parents didn't go to college. The real reason I decided to go to college was because I looked around, and then my parents were always beating it into my head, you're going to go to college, you're going to go to college, you're going to do better, that kind of a thing. And to me, in my mind, being poor meant not going to college. Not being poor meant going to college. So that was it. That was enough to make me go. I didn't know what I wanted to do, anything like that. So I just went. You know, I mean, really wasn't even a lot of rationale in some of the decisions I was making. And, you know, looking back, I'm thinking, geez, man, what a stupid decision that was to go there or to go to that place. But, you know, it was better than the alternative. It wasn't the best, but it was still a pretty good decision. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And sometimes when you and I know we've talked about that, it's good, better, best. Yeah. Sometimes it's like, well, I made a good decision. Well, could I have made a better decision? Then now what would be the best decision? But along that process, sometimes we don't see the best until we make, like, I'm going to start making some good decisions. If I'm not making any good decisions, I can't get to the best decision, right? Yeah. I mean, so you when you went to school, you decided to major in
communications.
Right. Do all this video stuff and everything else, right?
Funny now I see why.
Yeah, right. And found your love and passion there. So you go to school, get communications. What kind of pushed you towards that? You said you really didn't know. What kind of started?
I had no idea what I wanted to do. You know, even a couple of years in, I don't know what I want to do, because I don't know anybody that has any of these jobs. I'm not surrounded by those kinds of people. So I'm not just gonna point to something and say that it. So I did the most rational thing I could think of, which was look at my credits, look at the different degrees, and I said, okay, well, I have more of these credits than any of the other ones, and I actually do kind of enjoy those classes. They're somewhat interesting, so I'll just keep taking the communications classes.
Nice.
So that was it. And even when I graduated, I still didn't know what I wanted to do, but I had that degree.
So after you got that old sheep wool, right? What was your first gig that you did? What did you do after you graduated besides go, oh crap, now what do I do?
Electrical work.
Right.
Yep. I was doing electrical work. I did that for a little while just because I needed something right away. And then I started working for a cousin doing heating and air conditioning. Then I went to work for Verizon, still back east at that point in Virginia. And then I quit that. I moved out here and I started teaching and coaching.
Nice. So what brought you, because going from the East Coast and all of a sudden you end up and I'm going Midwest. Yeah. What was the step or process to say, hey, I'm coming out to the Midwest?
Well, you know, I didn't.
Because there's probably culture shock.
Yeah, I mean, I had been here to visit before, because a long time ago my mom's family was from here, sort of, and then my parents were moving out this way, and I just was looking around at the whole DC area, and I said, man, I'm not really that kind of career corporate minded. You know, to be there, it really is very much corporate minded. You know, lots of people clawing to get their way to the top, and it just wasn't me. I didn't want to spend my life sitting in an office, and I didn't want to be sitting in the hour and a half of traffic each direction that I was sitting in on the way back and forth from work. So I was just kind of open to anything to get out, you know, to try something different. Right. And my parents were moving out here, and you know, I didn't really have anything tying me back there. And I always kind of wanted to come out here and live for a little while.
Right.
So I did.
And became a coach, teacher.
Yep. First the teacher, and then the coaching opened up. So.
Found your passion, helping kids.
Yeah. And I had actually always been involved in stuff like that. Like even when I was in college, I had done some mentoring programs And then in the summers I would work, at some churches and stuff like that. And I ran some sports camps, things like that. And I really always enjoyed that.
Nice.
So, and it did some coaching that, Little League when I first got out of college,
Right.
coaching some cousins playing basketball and stuff. So
Yeah, but that's still, and that, so is that, do you think, when you first started, like, and we'll get here into the leadership stuff, but when did you start looking at, from a standpoint of maybe standing out in athletics, or when you're coaching a Little League team, to when you start being a teacher and a coach, to go, wow, it's not just my knowledge, but being able to take a group and lead them and be a leader? I mean, what kind of pushed you from that to start finding your passion and love for the leadership avenue? I know, like, and not just leadership, but personal development. I know you and I are calling it leadership for the kids, but it's more like personal development and a process to get you to, and we call it elevate to great with Coach Rozy, and I know you know that too, but we talk about just being able to go from where you're at, to separate from where you're at, and just get to a new level, even if it's just a step, or whether it's 3 steps. What was your process when you started? Was that in college you started to look at those type of things from a leadership standpoint? When you started, working at a Verizon, or when you became a coach or teacher, where did you start finding that passion, or did you always have that to kind of look at how to personal development and leadership?
I think I really started looking at it probably when I was in high school a little bit, but it was so unproductive. Again, as you do things longer, you get better at it. So,
right.
When you're younger, you might sit and stew about something for an hour, or a couple hours, or a couple weeks, or a couple months, and then maybe, if you're lucky, you'll find a way to make it into a positive and find something that you can change about yourself. So it started back then, but just as I got through, going through college, you start noticing certain people that are successful do things a different way. They think differently. So kind of starting to somewhat try to surround myself, not even intentionally, not like you'll hear some people say, oh, you need to go out and you need to go find 5 mentors in these areas, or things like that. It wasn't that explicit. I just found myself thinking, oh man, I like what this guy's saying. It makes me feel good. The stuff that he's saying, it's ringing true. There's something about what he's saying that's ringing true inside me. So more and more, I just was drawn towards those kind of people and those kinds of teachings. And then really, just the older I've gotten, as the years go on, it gets stronger. And then you realize, well, if listening to this kind of person a little bit, or surrounding myself with these people a little bit, can make me a little bit better, if I do it a lot, and if I devote more time to that, then I'll be even more productive, and I can grow even more and create the life that I want.
So do you remember back who rang you said, like, ring a bell, like, who rang your first bell? Do you remember what book, or like, did you hear somebody speak, or like that little thing maybe in high school, guy, like, you're like, wow, I just read this guy's book, and that really made an impact? Do you remember that? Or
not really? No.
Yeah, like, did you have a person that you kind of, like you said, there was like, I liked what that guy was doing? Was it maybe a coach, or did you, like, it wasn't a specific, like, wow, look at that dude?
Yeah, it really wasn't.
Really?
It was just a collection of ideas. It would come listening to music. Somebody would say something that hit me. I'm going to hold on to that thought and that idea. And I was always writing stuff down. I would always journal, and I always kept that hidden because it seemed a little strange. But if you walked into my bedroom, I'd have little one-liners, little quotes, little poems like that all over my walls, just hand scribbled, maybe taped on my mirror, things like that, just things to motivate me and keep me going.
So how often did you read those things, like every day? Like, did you have like favorite? Would you replace them, or did your whole wall just started getting covered up? It just started
getting covered up. yeah, and then eventually, you move a couple times, that stuff stops happening. But yeah.
So now moving forward, do you have some folks now? Is there anybody that rings your bell now? Like, once you started like developing and going, I like this, I like this. I always say it's kind of like in in strength and conditioning, there's all these theories. It's kind of like, okay, I'm going to start hanging my hat over on this wall. And I know there's not saying I'm not going to pay attention to what's going on around me, but as you started getting into the professional development, were there some key figures that you started noticing, like, wow, this really rings true to me, more so like maybe a book or an author or a speaker or something along those lines that you listen to?
There's a few people. Tony Robbins is one. I actually took his training and went through an entire course of his, like a 10-month course. So he's a huge one, Tony Robbins. There's been some other guys along the way that have just, a guy by the name of Danny Silko, I shared with you a little bit. He's a little bit more about relationships, but that can be applied to relationships it's not necessarily like your wife or your girlfriend. It's any relationship that you find yourself in. Becoming responsible in that relationship, stewarding it well, learning how to have boundaries and to not let each other down, but to call out like the best in people. So Danny Silk is another one, and then there's a guy by the name of Chris Valentin. Chris Valentin's another one.
So what processors or what principles do you think they had that rang a bell for you? Because I know everybody's different,
right.
But like, did you read a bunch of different things and then kind of start to hone in, or did you kind of right from the get-go go, wow, I read this Tony Robbins thing and I'm really going to start reading his things? You know what I'm saying? Or like, were you reading a bunch of different things, listening to a bunch of things, and then started to kind of hone in on, like, pinpoint more like I'm getting closer to the bullseye of what rings true to you?
Yeah, I really am not so good at honing in.
You're like, really?
Yeah, it's just I listened to this for a little while. I think on my phone, I think I probably have 5 or 6 audiobooks that I'm in the middle of listening to. I got a ton of books on my shelf that I probably read halfway through or different parts of it all the way through.
So pick any, what's 2 of those books right now
that I'm listening to right now? I've got The Everyday Millionaire.
Okay.
That's one that I'm reading. And then I'm also listening to Dave Ramsey. So that's another one that I just very recently started listening to Dave Ramsey. The Total Money Makeover. Yeah. That's another one.
I read his book. I went to one of his seminars when I lived in Colorado Springs.
Okay.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, he's good. He's good too.
I like the people that don't BS you.
Right.
Just come out and tell me what you have to say.
Yeah.
Like I don't need like all the funny anecdotes and things like that, or people to make you feel like, just hit me with the truth. That's what I want.
Right.
Maybe it's because I don't like to pay attention for too long. So I just give it to me straight and let me move on.
Well, so let me ask you this. So what? And I know. Like with the kids, we're going to be with them for the next 8 to 10 weeks. Every week we're going to have a lesson that you're going to put, we'll post out on Tuesdays. From that standpoint to the truths, let me ask you this, because I always say, like, the laws are the law. Like, law of gravity is the law. Like, you can try to argue that, but jump off a big building and that's going to hold true, right? I mean, like you said, there's success principles that hold true.
Right.
When you throw out your messages to the kids, what do you try to look at? Are you getting like, I'm probably jumping ahead, giving away some secrets, but like, there's some things like we always talk about. It's not just theory. There's some laws and practices that if you practice this, and I'm going to use Dave Ramsey as an example. It's like, if you do these 3 things, you will get out of debt. 3 or 4 things, you will get out of debt. They're simple, but they're not easy. Right? It's simple principles, but they're not easy to do because I know it's like, well, if you don't want to be overweight, it's very simple. Here's the 3 or 4 things you need to do. It's not easy because I like to eat. Right? So from that standpoint, what are some of and I don't want to jump way ahead to give things away, but how do you pick what lessons? Because there are so many lessons, I think. Like when you start going through, especially I know we're talking to a little bit younger kids, what's your process to go, like here's some of the basics, or what do you pick from? When you start working, and maybe it's not even the kids, but I know you do some personal, like work with just some people. What do you pick when you first, especially, again, I'm getting back, like I said, I'm asking about 10 different questions. When you're working with one person, you have a chance to maybe kind of pick their mind, go, wow, this is what I think they need at this time. How do you address that? So with one person, maybe what's your step process? What's your step process with like a team or a group that you're doing here, like on the stuff we're doing online? Maybe I'm throwing you to the wolves on that.
Yeah, well, this is... the first thing is focusing on what you can control, because you can sit back and say, well, leaders should do all of these things and any good leader would have these qualities, but when like Mike Tyson says, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. You can sit there and you can have it all drawn out. This is what I would do if I was a leader. I'd have all these things and everything would be perfect. Well, what are you going to do when plan A doesn't work?
Right.
So sitting back right now and saying, oh, all these different areas need to change. You can't change all those different areas, but you can control yourself. You can control your own habits. You can control your own thoughts. And that's actually where it starts, is your thoughts even before your habits. So that's what I like to do, is get people to realize what they can control and what they can't control. And then when they realize and understand what they can control, okay, you know that you can control these things. Like, they're in your power. You might not even actually have the personal strength right now or responsibility or character to control them, but at least you know that is something that is in the realm of your control.
Let me ask you this: how do you get somebody to realize that maybe is just in a tough situation? Because I've worked with kids before and adults and stuff, and it's like all of a sudden you know when you talk to them, because like almost a light goes on. They're like, oh wow, I didn't even know I could make those choices. You know what I mean? Like, so how do you get them? Like, yes, you want to get them to understand their control. How do you deal with somebody? Maybe somebody's listening right now, and they're like, I have no control. I mean, there's people that think that, and I always say, when they believe that, they lose hope, and once we lose hope, we're in trouble. Right? We got to get that hope back. How do you bring back that I have control? Give them some hope back. If in case they're in those situations, they're like, man, I don't think I have any control over anybody. Especially like I speak to young kids sometimes, and when you are 14, 15, 16 years old, you think, I don't have any, my parents are telling me what to do, my coaches are telling me what to do, my girlfriends or boyfriends telling me what, like I have no control over anything that I'm doing right now. What would kind of be your ground approach to reach some of those kids, or even maybe some young adults that are going, my boss is telling me, everybody's telling me what to do and I have no control.
Right. I mean, there are certainly, again, that's a good thing to understand. Like, there are some things you can't control. Like, you're under 18, you live in your parents' house. Some of their rules are stuck, right? That's what they are. They're where they are, and you can't outright right now go and change them. But a lot of it just becomes with your own response. How could you respond to that? So the last thing I want to do is tell them what's right, or tell them what they're doing was wrong. I just ask a lot of questions to get them to realize, because a lot of times, growing up, it was the same way for me. If you live in maybe a house where it's very strict, or school setting or whatever it is where it's very strict, and you don't have the opportunity to think because you are being just constantly told, and it's just easier to go along. You don't develop that ability. So when you get out on your own, that's why so many kids probably end up at home, or they don't do well when they go away to college, because they haven't been given the room or the freedom to develop that thought process. To weigh out the good and the bad. So I just ask a lot of questions. Really, that's the main thing. I just ask a lot of questions to get people thinking, and hopefully to lead them to where they're coming up with the solutions themselves, basically, is what it is. But I'm just learning what questions to ask to get you to realize, oh wait, I did have control of at least how I respond.
And that's where we talk about, I think, I call it attitude, but response, like how you think about it. It's like, what do you bring into the game of how you're going to respond? Like, your response you can control. I'm going to be mad, I'm going to be happy, and you don't have to be happy with something, but acceptance. Okay, I'm going to make the best maybe of a bad situation. We've all been in that before too. And I think that's why it's so important on the stuff that you're bringing to the table to these kids is just so vital from them, because I think so much in way back and way up to what you said with social media, and I want to ask you about that. What do you see from the impact that social media makes on kids from a self-image standpoint, and making some of those decisions, those choices, and maybe not asking the right questions because they see, to me, and this is my opinion, they see so much crazy stuff on social media. They see a 6-year-old kid that's standing in front of a Maserati, in front of a mansion. What they don't know is that wasn't his Maserati and it wasn't his mansion. But from a visual standpoint, they're like, well, look at this guy, he did, and I can say on social media, like, I made this decision and I went and made $1 million, and that becomes my visualization or my goal and my reality, even though maybe that's not a reality. What have you seen from, professional development and helping a person develop, what social media has done, maybe from a negative, but also I know there's some positive stuff too, but what do you see from the social media aspect?
I'll tell you right away, I don't even have a personal social media account. Because of
all the
it's just crap, and not social media. There's nothing wrong with social media in and of itself. It's like money or a gun. Neither one's bad. They could be used for bad, but they could be used for good. Right. So it's how you use it. And again, it's such a, you think at 14, 13, 15 years old, and even younger than that, people have these social media accounts, which you have kids whose parents would never let them go to a lot of different places physically at that age. They would shield them from all sorts of things physically, like not let them go or not let these kind of people be around them.
Right.
But on social media, they're completely open to all these different people, all these, like,
Yeah.
there's a skit that I saw one time a few years back, like on a comedy show, like if the internet was a real place, and it was you walking through the mall and all these different stores that were like different websites and places on the internet, and it's terrible. You know what I mean? And so we keep kids away from that in real life, but we don't keep them away from any of that on social media, or very rarely are parents that vigilant. And I don't want to put all the blame on parents or all the blame on some big brother or government that needs to regulate all the online traffic. So that's beyond me. I got nothing to say about that. But it has the potential for good, but not reined in. It's just like any kid. If you just let them run wild anywhere, it's not going to be a good effect on them. It's just, let's go back to the other thing you were saying about the unreal expectations. That's really what it is. It presents a view of reality that's not real. It's not real. Like, they're following these people around. Like, if you follow somebody on Instagram or Twitter, either they're being followed around by a camera or they're whipping their camera out to video themselves for days at a time, and then this stuff is all edited under perfect lighting with makeup artists and, like you said, rental cars and rental homes, and maybe sometimes there are their real homes,
right?
But their lives look so amazing and everything is just internet worthy and Instagram worthy to get the likes, and that's just a terrible way to live. Like, if you grow up trying to chase that, you're never going to be fulfilled.
Right.
So that's why I don't think social media is the best for younger people. But again, you can use it to find, uplifting things. If you seek out the people that are motivating you and giving you good life advice. But then again, at 14, 15, 16 years old, do you even know what good life advice versus bad life advice is?
Right.
So.
And that's fine. I think it's almost like you said, it's finding the things that resonate to you, but hopefully it's from a positive standpoint. Because I see from the positive standpoint of social media, like you said, I can go look up, I can go look at a Norman Vincent Peale and actually hear a talk that maybe he gave. Some of these, guys, like you said, Tony Robbins, I can pull up and listen to dozens and dozens of YouTube videos, podcasts that he's done, because I'm a Tony Robbins guy too.
Yeah.
I've talked about that. Like, what's cool is if I want access to those positive, good things, and I think that's where having yourself being able to lead this leadership. That's why when I do the Chalk Talk all the time, I'm asking, I say, what's the last books you read? Who's your authors you're reading? Because then when you take somebody who, like, I value your opinion and your ideas, so it's like, oh, Jay said I should be reading this book or listening to this person or read what this person wrote. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to write that down. I know you've given me, like, hey coach, check this out, and given me some books and things like that. And those are because you develop, and that's one of the things I know you talked about before. It's like the 5 people you hang around, it's like 5 mentors. And I've heard that from I think it was Jim Rohn that talked, was Tony Robbins' mentor. He was one who said the 5, like, if you want to see somebody, the 5 people, not necessarily mentors, but just the 5 people that you hang around most, you're going to be like those 5 people. So they're actually, like, we seek out, I know you've sought out mentors, I've sought out mentors before, but these aren't even mentors. This is just who you're kicking it with. Right. On a Friday night. It's like, look around the table and see, are they partier drinkers? Are they hardworking, dedicated? Are they family? Like, do they love their family? Do they, those are the people. If they're good people, I'm like, I always tell people that, like, those are the lives I want to look at. I want to look and see how you do with your relationships and your family and go, well, I really respect that. I'm going to talk to you, find out more. What would you tell, like, some kids with that? Because, like you said, at 14 and 15, maybe you don't know. How do you determine from a leadership standpoint? Because not everybody's going to stay on the team, is going to stand up, even somebody at work. Not saying you have to be the leader. You don't always have to be the leader to be on a great team. Right? And a lot of times I think kids think, well, I have to be I have to step up and I have to be the leader. If I'm not, then I'm not important to the team. And a lot of times you can be important to the team, but how does a person step up and say, wow, this is a good person I should follow? Because we've seen that go off the rails with some guys. It's like they start following the wrong guy, and it's like, well, he's the leader. I'm following him, and he's leading them down the wrong path. What do you say from kids that maybe want to be good leaders, and the traits that they should look for, and then for athletes or kids or even parent people parents that look and go, wow, I'm chasing somebody's tail that's not leading me in a good direction. I need to find another set of tail lights to follow because the person I'm following is not getting me where I want to go. What are some of those things that you think they should look for? And I know it's hard to pinpoint it because everybody's different, but a few qualities that maybe you'd say, look, here's 2 or 3 things that probably can lead you to a good path, or maybe 3 things to stay away from that would be like, this is really crappy for you.
Yeah, those are really good questions.
I'm throwing them at you.
You are
I'm throwing at you,
man.
buddy.
You're supposed to provide somebody with questions ahead of time.
This is called the winging it. Yeah, this is called winging it.
No, can I jump back and just address
yeah.
one thing that you were just talking about with the leader on a team? There's never really just one leader on a team. There might be somebody that's the public figurehead on that team, but somebody might be the leader in scoring, somebody else be the leader in rebounds, somebody else might be the leader in effort. It doesn't show up on a stat sheet. Someone else might be the guy that's the guy or gal that's always running around and checking on their teammates, making sure they're okay. Did you watch the Bulls documentary, The Last Dance?
I'm one of the guys that have not.
You have not seen that? Man, you gotta get on that.
The first like Rozy, you gotta watch
It's full of all kinds of really good leadership insight. You have Michael Jordan, who was the leader in one way because he was always getting after everybody, trying to get the utmost out of their performance. But they also talk about Scottie Pippen. He was the humble leader, the quiet guy that was always going around and when Michael Jordan would rip into somebody and make him want to go cry and quit basketball forever, Scottie Pippen would be the guy that would come around and say, hey, man, don't listen. You got, encouragement that way. So that's leadership.
Right.
There's all kinds of leadership, and we need all those different kinds of leadership.
Right.
So that's one of the things I'm going to stress during this thing is that everybody is meant to be a leader in some capacity.
Right.
And the world needs that. You're not going to lead all the time in every way, but in some capacity you will be a leader in your life. In every group that you're a part of, or even in your own life. So while we're talking about that, if there's something that you should stay away from, it's somebody that always wants to lead. That's a red flag. I always want to be the leader. I always want to be the leader. Follow me. I'm in charge. You do this. You do that. Again, that might look good on a little 15-second video or something like that, but nobody wants to be around somebody that's bossy all the time. And you're a great leader. Your business is great, Coach. What you do, how you help kids, it's great. You're a great leader at what you do. But if you're, there's some things you're just not qualified to lead. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
right,
for me
exactly.
too. Like there's some things I'm just not qualified to lead. And just because I want to be the leader because that's the honorable thing that makes me the brave one. You're not qualified. You're actually just kind of bullheaded now and arrogant, and you're going to lead people down the wrong path. So that's a huge one. If somebody's always wanting to lead and never willing to let somebody else lead or take control in some areas, they always have to be right. That's a red flag right there. Stay away from that person.
Right. So what do you think besides that? Like watching a leader, are there some traits that you'd think? Like you said, not saying that they have to stand up and be loud, but like when you walk into a room and you can see some people and you just look at 3 or 4 different people, you go, wow, that guy's probably a leader within the organization. He might not be a guy standing at the front podium.
Right.
What are some of those things that you see or maybe pop out, or things that you've seen and read in different places? Like, because one of the things I'll back up to when you talk about too, like I've been around some really amazing folks too who are great leaders, and the reason they're great leaders is because they would literally sit back and say, I'm gonna ask, I want to listen, talk to what these 10 people have to say, because I'm gonna pick. Not saying I'm gonna change my philosophy on everything, but if there's 10 people and I can pick one idea from each person and say, wow, I really like he said 10 different things, but I like one thing he said. Like today, there's people I'm probably listening and gonna go, yeah, I know that. Oh, that's bullshit. Oh, wait a second. Jay just said one thing that resonated with me. Just even us talking right here, and I should have had my notepad and I'm going to go back and watch this because there's a couple things you already said. I'm like, oh yeah, well, cool. I need to make a note of that. You know what I'm saying? Like, and you and I have talks quite a bit, but it's like when I can pick things from people, I'm like, that's what, from my standpoint, says, wow, this person's a great leader because, and I hopefully makes me a better leader because I'm like, I got to listen to these people from 2 different things. One, it's like, I really, really like that. Or I'm like, whoa, like you said, this man or lady, wow, I want to make sure as a leader I'm not I'm not going to do what they do. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So just kind of to say, like, are there a couple things too that you notice, and maybe it's not from a book, but that resonate to you to go, as a personal development person, go, wow, I saw this person, they had a really good skill in, you know, maybe it's listening, maybe it's, you know, is it communication? What are some of those things that you see?
Listening, definitely, like you said, that's one of them. And it's a big one. That's huge. You could say listening, and then you can go in that and explore it for years. But listening and honoring, like, do you honor people? You know, and that's Danny Silk. That guy was talking about Danny Silk. That's where that idea comes from for me. Like the idea of honoring. We don't always have to agree on everything, you know. And I can think something that you said was completely wrong for me, but do I honor you as a person? You know, just because I disagree with you on something doesn't make you a piece of crap. You know, it doesn't make you worthless. You know, you bring something to the table. You know, you have experiences that are valuable, and you've learned whatever lesson you've learned for some reason. You know, maybe you're saying the thing that I don't agree with because it's coming from a place of hurt. Maybe it's just because you're right and I'm wrong. You know, that's a complete possibility too, because I'm going to listen to you, because any good leader knows that they're not always right.
Right.
And that there's something that always has the potential to be corrected.
Right.
You know, the test of that is, what's the outcome of the idea or the thought? Does it bring wholeness? Does it bring peace? Does it bring unity between people? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah,
Does it help you accomplish your goal together? So that's the mark of a leader for me, is somebody that honors other people.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's probably the biggest one, and that has just been a huge thing for me. Like, oh wow, so it's not, you know, because as a coach, I was a coach and I was a teacher, and again as an athlete as well, you just be like, oh no, get on board or hit the highway.
Right. Yeah.
You know, my way or get out.
Yeah.
And you know, maybe there's times for those sorts of things, like if you're in the Army in war, you know, maybe, and that's why they train the way they do. You know, different times, you know, call for different leadership styles.
Right.
But we're not mostly in war.
Yeah.
You know, together. It's a very extreme circumstance, to where really, in everything that we do, it's the people that we're doing it with that is actually the most important thing. Because every job that you're going to do, everything that you're going to be a part of, really comes down to affecting people. Like, you know, you have a business, but what is your business? It's helping people.
Right.
You know, even as far as, take it to an extreme and be like athletes, well, their job really is entertainment. It's still about people. It's not about putting a ball through a hoop.
Right.
You know, like that's the medium for doing it, but it's still about the people involved, and you need people to help you along the way to be on that team or to run that company. You know.
No, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. So over the next, and I know this will be towards the younger kids, because but parents can listen and folks can listen in, and we'll have this posted. We're on different social media platforms that folks can listen to. But just to kind of wrap up, and I appreciate all your time too, Jake. But just like, what do you think your process, through the process of the next couple months, you know, 7, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, what would you hope would be your optimal outcome?
From the time that I'm going to be
From
sending in these leadership videos?
For the leadership videos with the kids and the parents that have a chance to listen, like what are you hoping for the outcome?
That after the end of 10 weeks, everyone that watches the videos realizes how important and powerful they are, you know, just in their own life and then in the lives of the people around them. Like every day, every moment, your interactions with people, you're leading people down one path or another. You know, you're leading even when you're not trying to lead, because leading isn't about telling people what to do and having them do it. It's about how you're influencing people. And people are always watching you, you know, whether you want to call it your spirit or your energy, whatever it is, you're projecting something from yourself, and that's influencing your environment wherever you are. And that comes out in the way that you speak, in the way that you look at people, in the way you carry yourself. So at the end of this, I hope people realize that. I hope these athletes realize that. And then I hope they take that responsibility seriously. And then I hope before they start to point their finger at anybody else, you should be doing this, you should be doing that, that they steward that own environment. You know, like you think of it as like being a gardener. Like, I'm tending my own garden. I don't care what his garden looks like right now, because right now I got weeds in mine that I need to take care of. that kind of a
right,
thing.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like make your own thought life, make your own the way that you present yourself, the way you go through your day, powerful, beautiful. Go back to the garden thing.
Right.
But that's really what I'm hoping to accomplish through this 10, because that'll make you a better student. That'll make you a better athlete. It'll make you a better father. It'll make you a better wife, husband, mom. All those
Right.
kinds of things. Wherever you go, if you can get that, if everybody can get that, and you just steward your own internal life, and it comes out everywhere you go, then you'll be a leader everywhere. The best leader you can be in whatever circumstances you're in.
I appreciate it, brother. Appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, no problem.
Taking the time. Thank you, sir.
Thank
hey,
you.
gang. Yeah, thanks so much, man. Hey, appreciate you guys joining us. This is Coach Rozy Chalk Talk. We're here every Wednesday, 10 o'clock Central Time. Want to thank Jay for taking the time today. And gang, every Tuesday, we'll have his videos posted up for our athletes. Parents can jump in and listen to it too. I know his teaching, just from knowing Jay and sitting down, we've had some deep discussions, probably deeper than we might have started getting into some of the deep stuff here, but just for him to be able to share, that's why I was excited to have him. And when he said he'd help do some of the leadership stuff with our athletes, I was excited. So be looking for his stuff on Tuesdays. Join us next Wednesday on Coach Rozy's Chalk Talk, 10 o'clock Central Time. Until then, gang, make it a great one. Thanks.
See you guys on Tuesday.